Well, hey everybody, it's OutLan. How's it going? And for this video, I wanted to do some Q&A from you guys. Now, I was supposed to go on a backpacking trip a couple weekends ago, and on that trip I had planned to answer your questions that you had asked on YouTube while I was out there on the trip, out in the field, sitting around the campfire after a long day of hiking. Unfortunately, that trip did not turn out the way I had hoped. And my buddy Jason and I decided just to completely bail after one bad thing after another happened on that trip. So what I wanted to do was come back to those questions that you had asked and still do the Q&A video, just do it right here in my backyard and answer your questions and hopefully give you a little bit more insight about me and try to answer your questions. All right, so I'm just going to go through the questions as they came in based on the post that I did, the community post on YouTube right before I had left for that trip. So the first question, it comes from Brad Bowman, and he asks, I want to know about your site selection process, site selection for the destination and also for trails. Also, does it vary given time constraints, your mood, etc.? Well, that's a lot to answer there, Brad. So let me start off, I guess, with the first part of the question, my site selection process. Well, typically what I do for site selection is I am primarily a hammock camper, so usually it's not that much of a concern as far as site selection. I do enjoy a nice camp with a view or some kind of water feature or something, just to kind of mix it up a little bit. Now, my trip to West Virginia that I did a few months ago, that I planned out well in advance. I knew I wanted to camp the first night at the top of the mountain. I wanted to be at the highest point that I possibly could, and which I ended up doing. And not much really of a view, but I was a very high elevation. Just it was a really cool area and pretty secluded, and it was really, really nice, and plenty of places to hang my hammock, so that was no problem at all, and it was just beautiful up there. And then I knew on the second part of the trip, the second night, that I wanted to do something by the water, by the creek. So I'd kind of planned it out that the second night I would come back down the mountain and camp out alongside the creek, and that worked out really well also. I had a beautiful creekside camp that night, rushing water beside me the whole night, which was just awesome. I absolutely love camping next to rushing water. My wife and I, we sleep every night with a white noise machine, and I've kind of grown accustomed to having that sound, just some kind of white noise when I sleep. So when it's really, really quiet, if I'm out in the woods and it's just super quiet, I usually can't sleep very well. I have a hard time falling asleep. But if I'm next to rushing water, or if I have a lot of wind blowing through the trees and stuff, that usually helps me fall right asleep. It also just depends on the day and how things have gone, and if I'm exhausted, I'm just going to fall asleep regardless. But I typically don't have to plan it out too much. If I'm dispersed hiking or dispersed camping, I can find a site pretty much anywhere with a hammock usually. It's not always the case, especially here in Ohio, but the places I usually go, like Red River Gorge and stuff, it's not really a problem. So the second part of your question was my site selection process for the trails, and does it vary given time constraints and my mood? Absolutely. I have mixed up trips. I've cut short trips. I've extended trips, just depending on the situation. If things are going really well and I'm kicking out miles and I feel great, then I may keep going to find a site. May just mix things up completely. It also depends a lot on who I'm with. Now, you guys have watched, if you've watched a lot of my videos in the past, you've seen that I typically like to camp with other people. I like to backpack with other people, and I've never really been that big of a fan of solo backpacking. But I'll tell you, this year, I have really come to love solo backpacking. I never thought I would say that, but I've really started to enjoy it the past couple times that I've done it. It's a totally different experience from being out with a group. You have a lot more freedom, I feel like. You can do so much more. You can go as far as you want or as short as you want, and you don't have to rely on what everybody else is feeling in the group. And you know, if you want to say, hey, I'm done for the day, I'm camping now, you can do it. Or if you say, I want to push it, I want to keep going, you can do that as well. So I actually ended up really enjoying my trip in Seneca Creek because I didn't have any of those constraints, and that was kind of fun. And of course, sometimes I do mix up a trip if I'm just feeling like this is just not happening. As with the Cave Run Lake trip in Kentucky, that one just completely fell apart, and I was with my buddy Jason on that one, and we had plans for what we wanted to do for that trip. We wanted to camp by the lake. We wanted to have an awesome spot on the water, and it just did not happen. There was no place to camp along the water where we were. Now, maybe we didn't pre-plan the trip well enough or whatever. For whatever reason, everything kind of fell apart. And you know, we had finally decided, okay, we'll stay, but we're going to go to this car campground and just pitch our tents. And yeah, I said tents. I'll get to that. But pitch our tents and stay at this car campground. Well, we got to the car campground. The tent pads were all gravel. Okay, so we had non-freestanding tents, backpacking tents, that the stakes would not go down on this gravel. And there's just, the pads were too big. You couldn't extend past the pads. So Jason and I just gave up. We just were like, let's go home. This trip was not meant to be. And you know, sometimes you have those. No matter how bad you want it to happen, and you think you planned for it, sometimes the trip just, you know, does not turn out the way you'd want. So it ended up being a fun 14-mile day hike. And of course, Jason and I had a great time hanging out with each other. He's a good guy, but you know, our plans for backpacking just fell through. Okay, so my next question is from Therapy INU, and Therapy INU asked me, what do you do for after hike recovery, or what about after long days on the trail? Okay, so typically for after hike recovery, like I said, I typically hammock camp. So the nice thing about after a long day of hiking is getting in that hammock and just kind of getting the pressure off my body. Just kind of lay there. I might lay there and take a little nap when I get to camp, depending on when I get to camp, and just take a little bit of a break and just kind of rest my legs. When I get home from a hike, usually the first thing I do is I end up taking a hot bath to kind of just ease my muscles and things like that. Usually I recover pretty quickly. I don't have a whole lot of pain. You know, I'll pop some ibuprofen if things are really bad, things like that. But the last few trips I've done, even in West Virginia, I expected a lot of leg pain after that trip, and I really didn't have much. I was recovered within a day or two, and just, man, I felt great, and I was back to walking around the neighborhood. So it just really depends. It depends on the hike, depends on the mileage, depends on the terrain, of course. And you know, there's a lot you can do, but unfortunately, I've been pretty out of shape this year. I had been running quite a bit in the years past, and I didn't do much of that this year at all. And all the races got canceled that I had planned to do. So I am out of shape, and definitely going to be doing some more working out for next season. Okay, Up Trail 71, Bob asked me, am I going to be using a tent like Frozen did on his last trip? Okay, so I said I'd speak to that. Yes, I do have a tent now. I have a 6 Moon Design Skyscape Scout tent, and I got that for basically just to be able to do more things outside of the restrictions of hammock camping and mix things up a little bit, and just to be able to expand my season a little bit more. Now, I've hammock camped in all 4 seasons. And usually it's not really a problem. I've got a pretty good insulation system going, 20-degree underquilt, things like that. But I have found that being in a tent typically keeps me warmer. So I decided that maybe that would extend my season a little bit more. And I want to be able to do some things that you're going to see in some upcoming videos. I'm going to be doing a little more car camping, overlanding type stuff in the Jeep. And so I plan to be able to take the tent with me and sleep outside of the Jeep. I'm going to have all my stuff in there and maybe work on a little bit of a camp kitchen type setup and build some kind of little platform for cooking out of the back of the Jeep, and then sleep alongside the Jeep in the tent. So I have a trip coming up in a couple weeks where I'm going to be doing overlanding, and I'm going to attempt to use the tent for sleeping outside of the Jeep. So stay tuned for that one. It's going to be awesome. So I want to thank you guys so much for the questions. That was pretty cool to be able to interact with you guys. I would love to be able to do this live. So I'm thinking about doing some more live videos as the season winds down here and I start going inside more. I'm going to be working on my studio, and I'm going to be doing a lot of live Q&As, a lot of live chats, live interviews. People really enjoyed my backpacker interview videos, so I'm going to be doing lots more of those. So stay tuned for those. I got a lot of cool trips coming up still, so stay tuned for that stuff. And thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys real soon. Take care.